Good evening, Abel. How are you tonight?
Good. I was already fretting about the email link.
Oh, yeah, we got it. So, everybody, welcome into International Podcast Day 2017. Thank you, everybody, for joining in our day of celebration, celebrating the power of podcasts. We encourage everybody out there in podcast land to use hashtag International Podcast Day today. And next up, we have Abel K. He is representing his podcast and the region of China. Abel, before I let you off for the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to read your bio and then thank our sponsors. And then we're going to be on the way. So,
Okay, before we start, can I just, is my voice okay? Picture okay? Everything all right?
everything's looking good. Yep.
Okay, cool.
You are good to go. So Abel
And
was born in Germany and lived most of his life in Miami, Florida. In 2010, Abel moved to Beijing, China, and he is an avid reader, writer, podcaster, programmer, and graphic designer, and Nutella monster. With a focus on mixing history and a novel type approach to his podcast, he has found success in a market that has proven to be competitive and tough. We'd like to thank our sponsors of International Podcast Day 2017. Blueberry is a full service podcasting company, a turnkey solution that will allow a new or veteran podcaster to get set up and running within 15 minutes. Pay them a visit at blueberry.com. Studio 21 Podcast Cafe is a working cafe with 2 working video casting and podcasting studios. The grand opening happens September 30th, where they will be broadcasting live throughout the day. Pay them a visit at studio21podcast.cafe. Also, The Messengers, a podcast documentary, is a journey through the modern world of podcasting, uncovering the magic behind why podcasters do what they do. Get a copy of The Messengers, a podcast documentary, in iTunes and on Amazon by visiting themessengersdoc.com. And of course, thank you to Potable. Looking for your next favorite podcast? Potable revolutionizes podcast discovery by providing podcast recommendations tailored to you. Start by going to play.potable.co. That's play.podibele.co. And finally, thanks to our bronze sponsors, the Audacity Podcast, the Modern Life Podcast Network, and Podbean. Abel, are you there?
and I just unmuted my microphone.
All righty. Well, we will
I
be
have,
here. We're really looking forward to you presenting. And
okay.
if you need
And
anything, we'll be here.
I can, I kind of think how to share some slides. And I will be using the chat window. And that's it. You tell me when I'm starting.
You are good to go. Welcome to International Podcast Day 2017, Abel. We will see you in about 50 minutes.
In about how much?
50
Oh,
minutes.
yeah. 50 minutes with you. That's right.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, then, everybody, welcome to my show. My name is Abel K, as Dave introduced me. And I do want to thank 3 people here. That's obviously Steve and Dave Lee from Modern Network Live and Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast. Without them, all this would not have been possible. And I also want to thank to all the other people who came before us in podcasting, because of all these 30 people here, I'm probably the newest one, the least experienced podcaster. I started less than a year ago. I'm probably also the least deserving one to be talking here, but hey, somebody had to be the new guy on the block. And I am pretty sure that this will be one of my most exciting events here. Now, my show is a little bit different from what I've seen so far, and oh my God, what shows I have seen so far. Evo, amazing show. James from Taiwan, amazing show. And my show will be split in 2. It means I will talk about 30 minutes in English and 30 minutes in Spanish. I chose to speak in English first, Spanish later. And that's because I have 2 podcasts, which are actually the same podcast in 2 languages. I own the podcast, thetaleofrome.com and elcuentoderoma.com. Basically, they're both the same. It's the story of Rome from its beginnings until the fall of the Western Empire in episodes. It's as simple as that. In a few minutes, I will explain why I did this and how it came that I'm today talking to you here. My topic is podcasting from a writer's point of view, podcasting from a writer's standpoint. And to do that, I would like to first read a very important phrase to me, a very important phrase to everybody who knows a little bit about writing or creative writing. And I'm going to read this from my screen. I will try to come full circle in half an hour with this same phrase. A good book will always lead you to another story, one that will take you to the origins of an idea or further towards exploring it. Again, I will try to come full circle here. So, as a writer, as a creative writer, podcasting is something totally different. How comes I am a podcaster is a short story that will take you 5 minutes before I start to talk about the topic. I was born in Germany. I lived in Argentina for another 13 years. I spent most of my life in Miami, Florida, and there is where I actually discovered that writing, creative writing, is really cool. I am an IT guy. I don't work in IT anymore. And since 2010, I live in China with wife and daughter. My daughter is in kindergarten today, even though it's Saturday. In China, when you have holidays, you also have make-up days for those holidays that you make up. This means, I don't know if you guys are aware, tomorrow is China's national holiday. It's October 1st. And everybody is off for about a week. But this means that you have to give back those off days on other days. Teachers, students, people who work in banks, everybody. So today is one of those make-up days where students have to go to school. My daughter is in kindergarten instead of being home despite it's a Saturday. So first, I would like to also thank the people who listen to my two podcasts, thetaleofrome.com and elcuentoderoma.com, because without you, I would be pretty much nothing. I would be shouting in a wall, and the only thing I would hear is my echo coming back from the mountain. But what I hear is much louder, much clearer, and much more diverse than my own scream. And what you guys send me, those comments, encouraging comments, posts on my wall, on my walls, on Facebook, on iVox, wherever, that makes it all worthwhile. Now, yes, this makes me do my next episode week in, week out. So I really, really need to thank you guys. Thank you for listening to my two podcasts, both in English and in Spanish. I have a few of them who listen to both of them, but right now my Spanish podcast is much more advanced than my English. I'm about to hit I already passed the half-year mark in the Spanish podcast. My English podcast is officially launching today, even though I have some 10 episodes already on the air, because I wanted to have my English podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere. So I uploaded 10 episodes, but the official launch, if you go to thetaleofrome.com, is today. Anyway, let's go with my topic. My topic is podcasting from a writer's point of view. And here I'm going to mention two people I admire. One is a writer, and one is a literary agent. That means the person whom a writer has to go to get his book published, unless he goes for self-publishing. Also, many writers never considered that podcasting could be a plan B, and sometimes it could turn out to become a plan A. I don't think this will happen in my case. I love writing. I think I would stick to writing. But for now, podcasting has been pretty good to me. Anyway, my writer of choice today is a woman, a Christian fiction, a historical fiction writer. Her name is Francine Rivers. And she once wrote a book of a young Jewish slave in the household of a rich Roman family. Sometime after a Roman guy called Titus destroyed Jerusalem. At some point in the story, the girl said something like, if you have nothing worth dying for, then you have nothing worth living for. I still remember the first time I read that phrase. I made it mine. Of course, I didn't steal it, but it really, really struck me. Now, let me give you my literary agent of choice. His name is Julian Friedman. And I saw once a TED talk of his. Actually, I saw it about 100 times more after that. And by the way, thank you, sir, for allowing me to mention you here. I'm honored. Julian Friedman prefers to let people think he's a nasty guy as a literary agent, but I'm 100% sure that he's a very nice person. I can totally see how new, inexperienced writers dread literary agents and treat the whole thing like the breakout novel is like a holy grail to be obtained. Well, it's pretty similar in podcasting too, because this doesn't happen just for writers. A lot of podcasters spend days and weeks and sometimes a month daydreaming of being listed in iTunes' new and noteworthy section. That's how we are. We like that. We go for it. But sometimes that's not the most important thing. Anyways, let me quickly mention you how this man, Julian Friedman, introduces himself on this TED Talk. Hi, my name is Julian Friedman, and I'm an agent. Of course, if you are a writer, he already has your attention right there. So then he continues of rejecting people. We receive some 6,000 offers a year, manuscripts, of course, potential books to be published. And we generally pick around 5 or 6 from those 6,000. He goes on explaining why people write stories that end up being boring and how writers end up blaming literary agents for their failures, despite the fact that the ancient 3 parts structure of a story, of any story, is known to humankind well before the Roman Empire, for that matter. In the end, he gives writers the keys to successful writing, but he camouflages those keys so well that you really have to learn how to read between the lines, but he gives them to you. Amazingly, he gives them to you. And he gives them to you so well that I'm still wondering, after that, how come he's still getting manuscripts that get rejected? Because that's how good he is. Anyways, with these 2 examples, I try to let viewers see the difficulties of and the pains of being a writer. Do you really need to love writing so much that you would be willing to die for? Well, of course, nowadays we don't need to go that far, but everybody agrees that if you don't do something you really love, the word happiness will be a strange concept to you. On the other hand, isn't it really horribly discouraging that 5,994 manuscripts get thrown out the window out of 6,000 every year? And my answer to both these questions is, you bet. So why is it that still, despite of such odds, mind-blowing odds against you, and despite being pushed to ask yourself, do I really love writing so much? Still, there is a lot of people trying to do just that. Why? I'm one of them. That I can tell you right away. I wrote pretty much my whole life, from high school contests to manuals on how to use software back in Miami. And there was always that one thing that I always left for later. That one big thing. And of course, I'm talking about a novel. In my case, my favorite genre is a historical novel. And because I like history, that just makes sense. And because I like China and the Roman Empire, it just makes sense that I was writing novels about that. But I always told myself I needed more data. I didn't feel like I was sure on what I was writing. I mean, it's somehow, okay, I would not make a mistake of, okay, Emperor Commodus walked out of his palace and grabbed his iPhone to call, blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, of course, not that type of mistakes. But often when I reread my own writing a month or two later, I felt this paragraph wasn't right, or this piece wasn't right. Sometimes a whole chapter wasn't right to me. And I just didn't feel right to go for it and self-publish or try to look for a literary agent. That's something I actually never did. I haven't done it yet. So then one day I started writing. And that was a couple of years ago. And I found there were two problems. One of them I totally expected, which is not enough research. But the other one, I really did not expect it to happen to me. And that was writer's block. I just stopped writing. Sometimes I would stop writing for a week. I would find any excuse, any reason. And sometimes I would not write for a month or several months at a time. And this was not something like me. Of course, it's in Miami, as an IT guy, the first thing you get when you're doing something, especially when you're having a contract with somebody, is a deadline. And after you get that deadline, the second thing you get is a deadline for the prototype of whatever your clients want you to do, so that you don't miss your first deadline. But there was, my deadlines were, my writing deadlines were gathering dust and then just blowing off the edge of the universe. But then slowly, as I was doing research, of course, research was YouTube, academia.edu, pbs.org, the History Channel, you name it. And of course, podcasts too. And as I was getting those two things together, and I'm talking about my researching and my procrastinating, something happened. Something magic happened. Let me explain. While I was researching, I did what every responsible writer would do. Research, deep research. And of course, among those, podcasts. I bumped into a few really, really good podcasts. I'm talking about history podcasts. But I also started to bump into podcasts that actually, because of the links, that helped other podcasters. I was not a podcaster, I was a writer. And of course, I was also getting emails about help to writers, blah, blah, blah. They did nothing for me. But what I realized is that maybe, just maybe, I should be helping others to get out of the situation where I was in. I was stuck in writer's block. I was stuck in procrastinating. And I was blaming that whole thing to research. My research was fine. I did not need real research. I was using this as an excuse. And then I said, wait, if I podcast, maybe this can help other people later after me. And of course, so the idea of a podcast of my own was born. I would podcast about ancient Rome so that other people maybe find me and their research is not that hard. And then like a month later, I had another idea. As a creative writer, I said, why don't I mix my podcast with a novel, with a creation, an imagination of my own, and put it together with a podcast? So I would be, I would not be doing a book, but at that point I didn't care. Actually, most successful writers don't care about the book per se. They care about the world that is going on inside their heads. But I knew I loved the idea, putting a novel inside a historically true podcast. So history and fiction together, truth and lies together. And of course, I started to work on this idea, and I said I would have a family, like a bunch of people going from generation to generation as Rome progresses through the good times, through the bad times, through the ugly times of ancient Rome. So listeners will not only be able to hear what scholarly books can give you, a dry account of events, but they would also be able to immerse themselves in the little things of daily life at the time of ancient Rome. And of course, I remembered, well, this would be something like a Dallas type of dynasty of sometimes poor, sometimes rich, sometimes fortunate people. And that was germinating in my mind. And the podcast suddenly became something I was really willing to do anything for. I wouldn't say die, but I was really getting back to the concept of that little Jewish girl who said the phrase that Francine Rivers put into words. And of course, now the odds of being one of the six in those 6,000 suddenly didn't matter anymore. I mean, the odds were not that high anymore. And then, of course, I also remembered, and probably the young people here will not remember that, but I remembered black guy called Kunta Kinte. If anybody remembers Roots, written by Arthur Haley, this is a story that goes, and I might be wrong, but this follows a single family for some 350 years. 300, 350. It might be more. I don't exactly remember, but this was something amazing. I watched that when I was around 18 or 19 years old, and I never forgot that. So here we have it. Why a podcast and how my podcast came to be. Uh, Both my English and my Spanish podcasts are new and small. Both have their own websites, and on a tip, I got like 1,000 tips from Daniel. On a tip from Daniel J. Lewis, I religiously upload an episode on the same day of the week, like the week before. And I do that now. I do that for both podcasts. And of course, the only difference is that if one episode is talking about something happening in Rome, in the Spanish podcast, I would try to compare it with something that happens in Spain, while on the English podcast, I would try to find something that can be relatable to American public, to American listeners. And now I need to go to the three keywords that I came up with three keywords about podcasts. One is a phenomenon, plural phenomena. One is media, and one is tools, and tools that you can use, not tools that you see others use. So let's go with that. And I think I'm going to open or see a slide to help me walk through. And let me get my glasses here. I'm going to first talk about a phenomenon, which I think is what podcasts are. But first, I need to define phenomenon. Phenomenon is something that occurs or can be perceived by our senses. It might not occur all the time, but sometimes it hasn't occurred ever before, or we haven't perceived it before. Other dictionaries simply say that a phenomenon is usually something extraordinary or extremely unusual. And here are a few examples. The Beatles were a phenomenon. So was Madonna, Pelé, and Maradona, or Messi now. And the way the world took in Harry Potter is a phenomenon too. A lightning strike is a phenomenon. It's familiar to all of us, but experienced by few. Well, I wouldn't want to be one of those who experience it. And you're getting the idea. The Ice Age has been a recurring phenomenon. And of course, the internet is a phenomenon too. And of course, podcasting is one of the latest phenomenon that has conquered, I would say, millions upon millions of listeners. Now, some listen to music, some listen to politically charged monologues, some listen to audiobooks, and the list of genre here is really, really long. But the thing is, they all listen. They don't read. That's the difference between podcasting and reading. In fact, more and more books get turned into audiobooks just because this is a true phenomenon. We live in a world of podcasting, and it's only growing bigger. Okay, let me talk 2 minutes about media. And of course, I don't need to explain or argue or defend that podcasting is media, but rather I would like to come to a little short conclusion of what kind of media podcasting has become. For that, first, let me see what is the first media out there in human history. The very first media was just plain communication between two humans, or proto-humans. Those were grunts, noises of approval or disapproval, body language, facial expressions, body odors. Then came language, and that was huge. That was the first big medium within the human evolution. For the sake of a simple example, imagine two proto-humans facing each other and trying to communicate. And one of them says snake, or a sound that they both know to mean the word snake. So far, so good. The other one will immediately turn and look around where that snake might be. Now imagine that I could place a human who has already acquired language with that proto-human who does understand snake but has not acquired language yet. Okay, and now let's imagine, just for the sake of the example, that this guy says snake. Of course, the other guy will turn and look for the snake. But now, if the first guy, the one who has acquired language, says something along the lines like, I would hate to wake up and see a snake around me, the proto-human would still be looking around for the snake because that's what he heard. He didn't hear the rest of the sentence. The fact that the word snake was in a sentence did not have any meaning to the proto-human. He would not grasp it. It millions of years to develop this media. This was the slowest media that we ever produced. Scientists think that Neanderthals knew the concept of 2, 3, and 4. And after that, 10, because we had 10 fingers. But all the other numbers between those and anything above 10 was many or many. And because of this lack of synthesis, words like several, a certain amount, or even more than you can count with your fingers took millennia to reach our minds. So there we have language. What's the next one? People could argue that because of the agricultural revolution and the late Stone Age and the specialization of professions, there could be several. In my opinion, the next one did not show up until writing. And of course, writing is recording and the need to pass that recording, because if you write something and nobody understands what you write, what's the purpose of it? And after that, and I'm going to go a little faster now, is the next one after writing is print. Yes, you can argue on that. Some people might say, well, it's not a print, it's the end of the Bronze Age, the collapse of the Bronze Age. It could be the Renaissance, it could be the Columbian Exchange. I still argue that print is the one media that really came next. Because at that point, print allowed us to either do 1 or 1 million of something that we did without needing 1 million people to reproduce that, or one person to reproduce it 1 million times. So after that, we go to the Industrial Revolution. No special media there, communication media. And then we have radio, cinema, and television. Yeah, telephones were around too, but those were tools, not media. You cannot use a telephone to spread your word to masses. And then we come to the 20th century, and the 20th century, right, those 20 years around the end of the Cold War, around the fall of the Berlin Wall, we have a lot. LPs, cassettes, computers, programs written for those computers in BASIC, C, GW Basic, Pascal, blah, blah, blah. And then we have VHS tapes, CDs, rewritable CDs, DVDs, and then boom, 1995, the internet went public. Web pages and email addresses were here. And of course, you can argue me on this too, but I made a short list of what that time looked like because I was there. If you're under 30, for you, this is history. Yahoo and Alta Vista were the two biggest search engines. And yes, you can argue me on that one, but Google was still 5 years from being born. Beepers were cool, and cell phones had still those long antennas that you had to pull out to get a decent reception. And of course, if not, they look like a shoebox. I also will never forget the look of the very first homepage of Microsoft. And I will also not forget my own homepage made on GeoCities. Probably most of you don't even know what GeoCities is. At that time, it was big. And I used MS Front Page to build it in a very primitive HTML. And the coolest three things of HTML at that time were table, marquee, and iframe. But guess what? As soon as the internet allowed voice and music to be spread, and they were here to stay. They are still here, and they will stay here as long as we don't have a switch to shut this down. And because I don't believe there is a switch to shut down the internet, I also don't believe there is a switch to shut down podcasts. Now, the third concept, a tool. A tool is something that you can use. If you see others using it, there is no such thing. So podcast is a tool because you can use it. A blog is a tool because you can use it. When I deal with these three concepts, I purposely exclude things like a movie. Yes, a movie is a tool for companies or governments to spread big ideas or to advertise to masses, but for you, it's just something you watch. It's not a tool for you. Same like newspapers. Newspaper column is a tool for Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, but it's not a tool for you because all you do is reading it. And of course, you can approve it or disapprove it, but you don't get to put what you think in there. With podcasts, it's different. So now, if you make a Venn diagram with two circles, but instead of two circles, if you make three circles, one of them being phenomenon, media, and tool, podcast is one of the few things, it's by far not the only, but one of the few things that you can put right in the middle part of these three circles. It's a phenomenon, it's media, and it's a tool that you can use. And coming back to my writer's point of view, I truly encourage you to try it out. You have a book, and you probably heard 1,000 times sometimes email which you already start to consider spam. The world needs your story. The world needs your novel. Your breakout novel is just around the corner, blah, blah, blah. Give yourself a chance to serialize, to make episodes. Anyway, a book usually is written in chapters. You write chapter by chapter. Very seldom, as far as I know, not even the Bible comes from A to Z and there is nothing in between, not even a title. It doesn't happen. It comes in episodes. In podcasts, we call them episodes. In books, we might call them chapters. There is no difference between the two. Give yourself a chance. Your idea might be brilliant. Instead of writing a book, put it in a podcast. I live in China, and a lot of people in China do that. Hours ago, another show from this guy in Taiwan. What an amazing show. That was an amazing hour, and I could not agree more on all of the things he said. What's going on in China. And one of the things is the podcast phenomena. It's growing big time. And yes, there are some differences. One small difference is Chinese are kind of crazy about QR codes. Everything is comes with a QR code that you scan, and then you go from there, whether that is buying some groceries or reading a book or a flight ticket. But the podcasting community is growing in the sense that a lot of young, unknown novelists are publishing their novels in episodes. Not exactly written, okay, some do written too, but they read them. They read them in episodes, and sometimes they go as far as to hire voices for that better reading. And guess what? 2 3 years down the road, they are celebrities. Okay. And yes, there is many other points in China that are happening, but I'm not going to go into that. My half-hour mark is almost over, and I'm going to switch to Spanish. For all the ones who know a little bit of Spanish, please stay tuned. And for everybody else, please visit thetaleofrome.com or elcuentoderoma.com. Ok, vamos a hablar ahora en español. Inicialmente yo pensaba tener unas banderitas donde yo haría esto para decir que estoy hablando en español, o esto para decir que estoy hablando en inglés. Dicho sea de paso, yo no uso la bandera de España, uso la de Argentina porque viví en Argentina, no en España. Sí estuve un montón de veces en España. Pero ahora esta parte voy en español. Y el tema de esto es, por supuesto, además de promocionar mis dos podcasts, es hablar un poco de podcast desde el punto de vista de un escritor. Como una breve introducción, yo nací en Alemania, viví en Argentina, inmigré a Argentina a la edad de 12, eso no lo elegí yo. Inmigré a los Estados Unidos en los tempranos años 90 y viví allí hasta que me mudé a China. Me mudé a China en el 2010, o sea que la mayor parte de mi vida la pasé en Miami. Miami, como una ciudad bien latina, si bien fue un tanto diferente de Argentina, y si bien los dos acentos no son iguales, en realidad son muy, muy diferentes, fue un lugar donde estudié, aprendí computación y IT, y por supuesto ahí decidí que yo quería, uno de mis dos sueños era escribir, algún día ser escritor. El otro sueño era vivir en China, pero eso no viene al caso en este podcast, eso será para alguna otra ocasión. Bien, en cuanto a los podcasts y como podcast desde un punto de vista de un escritor, quiero comenzar nombrando a dos personas. Una persona es una escritora norteamericana, una persona que escribe novelas de ficción histórica cristiana. Su nombre es Francine Rivers. Y un agente literario. O sea, esa persona que cuando uno termina de escribir un libro tiene que ir, por favor, públiquelo para mí. Por supuesto que agentes literarios y escritores tienen una relación a veces un tanto extraña, porque ambos necesitan uno del otro, sus vidas están muy entrelazadas. Y ahora quiero comentar qué es lo que me gustó de cada uno de esos dos. De Francine Rivers, yo leí muchos libros de ella. En uno de los libros, ella cuenta de una chica judía que vive como una esclava en una familia muy afluente en Roma antigua, unos años después de que un tal Tito, destruye Jerusalén. Y durante la historia, en un momento dado, ella dice: si no tienes algo por lo que vale la pena morir, no tienes una vida que vale la pena vivir. Yo todavía me acuerdo la primera vez que yo leí eso, cómo eso me impactó. No me pude olvidar de eso por días enteros, me sonaba en las orejas. En cuanto al agente literario, su nombre es Julian Friedman es un norteamericano, vive en California y por supuesto es un muy buen agente literario. Y la frase que quiero citar de él es cómo él se ha introducido en un TED Talk, o sea, en uno de esos talks donde gente habla del tema que sea. Y él se introduce así. Buenos días, yo soy un agente literario y por supuesto, si usted es un escritor, ya ahí nomás toda la atención hacia él. Yo estoy en el negocio de rechazar gente. Ese es mi negocio. Y él sigue contando que en su agencia reciben unos 6,000 manuscritos anualmente, pero terminan eligiendo unos 5 o 6. O sea que muchos salen volando por la ventana. Y ahora quiero hacer dos preguntas de esas dos oraciones. ¿Un escritor realmente ama escribir tanto así que moriría por eso? Por supuesto, hoy en día en la vida moderna no tenemos que ir no tenemos que ser tan drásticos como para morir, pero por supuesto sabemos que cualquier persona que no hace lo que realmente le gusta, bueno, la palabra felicidad va a ser un concepto muy extraño. Y por el otro lado, ¿acaso no es horrible pensar que las chances de un escritor son, o sea, usted está en una bolsa de 6,000 personas y 5,994 de esas personas van a salir volando por la ventana? La respuesta a esas dos preguntas es sí. Es terrible y sí a lo de Francine Rivers. Y aquí quiero volver un poco a mi experiencia como escritor. Yo escribí casi toda mi vida, hice muchos manuales en los tiempos cuando vivía en Miami, manuales para software, manuales para esto, para lo otro, pero también cuentos breves, relatos breves, fantasía, biografía, lo que sea. Pero había una cosa que siempre dejaba para después, más tarde. Y eso era novela. Y por supuesto, como a mí me gusta la historia, o sea, una novela de género histórico, hace sentido. Y por supuesto, como me gusta la historia del Imperio Romano y de China, entonces una de las dos opciones era una novela en Roma antigua o en China antigua. Elegí Roma antigua porque, bueno, por esas cosas de la vida, pero cuando empecé a escribir, cuando finalmente me puse a escribir, me encontré con dos problemas. Uno de esos dos problemas yo sabía que me iba a pasar. El otro, yo creía que era imposible que me iba a pasar a mí. El que yo sabía que me iba a pasar era que yo me sentía muy inseguro de mis datos. O sea, no estaba seguro si lo que escribía iba a hacer un match con la realidad de aquellos tiempos, porque estoy hablando de Roma antigua. Por supuesto que no hubiera hecho un error de decir, bueno, el emperador Cómodo salió del palacio y agarró su iPhone para llamar a... No, no ese tipo. Pero cuando leía cosas más chiquitas como... a veces leía oraciones mías 2 meses después de escribirlas, me parecía que algo le faltaba. Entonces, por supuesto, iba a lo que se llama research, búsqueda de datos. El otro problema que realmente no pensé que pasaría conmigo era una cosa que en inglés se llama writer's block, o sea, un bloqueo de escritor. Y yo era una persona de IT en Miami. Eso nunca me pasó a mí antes, jamás. O sea, como IT, lo primero que uno recibe es un plazo. Para esta fecha, tal cosa tiene que estar. Listo, es muy simple. Pero me sucedió. Y entonces, cuando estas dos cosas, o sea, mi bloqueo y mi búsqueda de datos empezaron a poco unirse. Le explico cómo. Mientras yo no escribía, mientras procrastinaba, me di cuenta que yo le echaba la culpa al hecho de que no tenía datos suficientes. Pero mientras tanto, yo seguía buscando datos. datos de Roma antigua en este caso, también encontraba, por supuesto, YouTube, libros, canales de historia, academia.edu, fui a todos lados. Pero una de las mejores fuentes eran los podcasts. Y empecé a ver podcasts de Roma, pero también empecé a ver podcasts de podcasts, o sea, podcasts de cómo ayudar a otra gente que hace podcasts. Y entonces me dije, bueno, yo no podría ayudar a alguien que hace podcast, pero sí podría ayudar a otros escritores que están en la misma situación mía, bloqueados porque no saben de datos, y ¿por qué no hago yo un podcast de Roma? Así le ayudo, de Roma antigua, así le ayudo a otros más tarde de salir de la situación en la que se encuentran. Y entonces otra idea se me ocurrió. Como escritor creativo, dije, yo tendría que en realidad poner una familia, una saga familiar totalmente de mi imaginación y mezclarla con la historia de Roma propiamente dicha. O sea que la gente que escucharía no solamente tendría los datos, digamos, secos que un libro académico le puede dar, pero también verían detalles cotidianos, esos detalles chiquitos cotidianos que a las personas les sucede, cosas chiquitas que hacen a diario, mientras el relato de Roma sigue su curso. Gente, me encantó mi propia idea. Me encantó tanto que de pronto yo sabía que aquí había algo por lo que valía la pena vivir o morir o como quiera que sea. Y por el otro lado, ese número de uno de los 6 dentro de 6.000 ya no me importaba, ya no era importante. Ya maté a ambos conceptos con esa idea. Y mi consejo para todos los escritores que andan dudando, escriba. Pero si tiene dudas de escribir un libro, arriésguese en un podcast. Yo estoy seguro que su idea es brillante, sea lo que sea cómo plantar frutillas o cómo navegar en un bote para solo 2 personas de India a Kenia, lo que sea, el tema que sea, su idea es brillante. Pero pruébelo en podcast. ¿Y por qué digo eso? Porque el otro tema, y todavía me quedan unos 15 minutos, creo, 10 minutos, el tema es que podcast es un fenómeno, un medio y una herramienta. Y aquí quiero declarar un poquito por qué considero que podcast es un medio, una herramienta para usted. O sea, no una herramienta que usted ve a otra persona usar, sino una herramienta disponible a su propio uso y un fenómeno. Primero, fenómeno. Un fenómeno es algo que, según definiciones, es algo que sucede extremadamente raro o es increíble o no sucede muy a menudo y que nosotros podemos percibir con nuestros sentidos. Esa es la definición oficial. Por ejemplo, los Beatles o Maradona o Pelé, Madonna, el Internet es un fenómeno, el habla es un fenómeno. Un rayo es un fenómeno que mucha gente, o sea, todos sabemos lo que es un rayo cuando hay una tormenta. Por supuesto que pocas personas saben por experiencia propia lo que es un rayo. No quiero estar entre ellos. Y es algo que a veces se repite cada tanto, pero a veces sucede una vez y nunca más. El podcast, después del Internet, también es un fenómeno. Pero como al contrario de otros podcasts, yo firmemente creo que podcasts no están aquí para desaparecer. Podcasts van a estar aquí para un largo plazo. Medio, aquí no tengo que ni discutir de si es que o no un podcast es un medio. Por supuesto que es un medio. Uno de los primeros medios nuestros fue el habla. O sea, lenguaje como protohumanos, como prototipos, cuando cuando empezamos a evolucionar, primero descubrimos fuego, pero el fuego no fue un medio. Sí, fue un fenómeno, pero no fue un medio. Y sí, fue una herramienta, pero un medio, o sea, una forma de transmitir información, fue el lenguaje. Ahora, como un ejemplo, quiero que se imagine a dos personas que todavía no adquirieron lenguaje, pero sí tienen sonidos. Al igual que animales, ellos tienen sonidos para víbora, para águila, para peligro, fuego, bla, bla, bla. Imagínense a esas dos personas y uno dice el sonido que ambos saben es víbora, serpiente. Por supuesto que la otra persona inmediatamente se va a dar vuelta y va a mirar a dónde está la serpiente. Ahora, imaginémonos, como un ejemplo nada más, que de las dos personas, uno ya adquirió el lenguaje, el otro todavía no. Y entonces la persona que ya adquirió un lenguaje más moderno dice algo así. Yo creo que no me gustaría despertarme una mañana y ver una serpiente cerca mío. La otra persona inmediatamente se daría vuelta y estaría mirando a dónde está la serpiente porque él escuchó la palabra serpiente. Él no escuchó la oración entera porque el concepto de abstracción, de poner una palabra dentro de un contenido abstracto, todavía no le llegó a él. En realidad, ese medio tardó miles y miles de años de desarrollarse dentro nuestro. Por supuesto, después vamos más rápido. El siguiente medio para nosotros fue escritura. Y por supuesto, escritura obligó a humanos a compartir esa sabiduría, porque si usted escribe y nadie sabe leer lo que usted escribe, ¿para qué escribe, no? El tercero fue, mucha gente dice que, bueno, la caída de la edad de bronce podría haber causado otros medios, pero después de la escritura, yo no creo que existió otro medio tan importante como la imprenta. La imprenta fue algo que nos habilitó, que una persona de pronto puede imprimir 1 o 1.000.000 de algo, de lo que sea. Y no hace falta que tengamos 1.000.000 de gente más, estoy viendo cuánto tiempo me queda, para conseguir esa impresión. Pues hay otra gente que dice que el intercambio después de Cristóbal Colón también pudo haber traído medios. Yo personalmente no creo en eso, pero está el debate. También el Renacimiento, existe el debate de eso. También después la Revolución Industrial en Inglaterra. Pero eso fueron herramientas y no medios. O sea, tomar un tren desde una localidad de Inglaterra a otro no fue un medio, fue una herramienta. Y por supuesto que fue un gran progreso, pero hay que dividir qué es un fenómeno, qué es una herramienta y qué es un medio. El medio que sigue para mí son 3. Radio, televisión y cine. Pero por supuesto no en ese orden. Y repito, teléfono no fue un medio en mi humilde opinión, porque creo que el teléfono era simplemente para comunicarse con otra persona, no para comunicar algo a masas, como un libro o como una persona hablándole a una multitud. Y por supuesto, después llegamos al final de nuestro siglo XX, mejor dicho, a los últimos 20 años que rodean la caída de la muralla de Berlín, el muro de Berlín, y el fin de la Guerra Fría. Y ahí tenemos muchos medios, desde computadoras, CDs, LPs, hay un montón que tampoco quiero leerlos de aquí. Y en el 95, en 1995, el Internet está público. Por supuesto, en ese tiempo el Internet era muy, muy rudimentario. Yo todavía me acuerdo de la primerísima página web mía. Si ahora la miro, era como, no sé, mirar a un dibujito que hace mi hija. Ella tiene 4 años. Pero estaba ahí y yo estaba muy contento de ese cambio. Eso realmente era un fenómeno. ¿Y sabe qué? Tan pronto como el Internet tenía la capacidad de transmitir voz y música, podcasts llegaron. Voz y música, porque el podcast no es algo que se lee, es algo que se escucha. Es más, por eso digo que es un fenómeno. Un podcast no es algo que se lee, porque en nuestra sociedad más y más gente escucha en vez de leer. Mientras vamos al trabajo, mientras volvemos del trabajo, o mientras estamos viendo una película, si está aburrida, nos ponemos a mirar y ya. Esas tres cosas, medio, herramienta y fenómeno, si hacemos un diagrama Venn, o sea, tres círculos, no dos, sino tres, que se interlacen entre los tres. La palabra podcast o el podcast en sí es algo que yo puedo meter justo en el medio de esos tres círculos. Eso creo. Sí, hay muchas otras cosas que también podemos poner, pero muchas cosas son una herramienta y un fenómeno, pero no un medio. Otras cosas son un medio y una herramienta, pero no un fenómeno. Y es por eso que estoy tan contento de haberme subido a este tren, a este viaje llamado el podcast, porque creo que todo escritor o toda persona que siente una pasión por escribir con creatividad tendría que probar hacer un podcast, porque al final y al cabo no hay tanta diferencia entre un capítulo y un episodio. Pero lo que sí quiero que sepa es que mucha gente, muchos libros se van convirtiendo en audiobooks porque la gente lee más. Les quiero agradecer una vez más y por favor visiten elcuentoderoma.com y thetaleofrome.com. Gracias.
Thank you, Abel.
Creo que
We appreciate every bit of information that you shared there. We had some good information in the chat. So unique that this year you're able to broadcast half of your session in English and then in Spanish as well. So thank you so much for joining our International Podcast Day 2017 event. Before we end, just let everybody know the website that they can check out any of the work that you're doing.
Yes, English is thetaleofrome.com. En español, elcuentoderoma.com.
Thank you so much, Abel. We really appreciate your contribution. Don't forget, everybody, use don't forget to use hashtag International Podcast Day before and after the event. And with that, thank you, and we will see you in a few minutes.
Thank you.